Small teams with big ideas can change the industry. For 6 years, Team Cherry has been crafting Hollow Knight Silksong. It is highly anticipated and Steam's most wish-listed game. Silksong is 100% actually launching this year.
Today, gamers, we rise to talk about a little game that you may not have heard of called Hollow Knight. Specifically, its sequel, Hollow Knight Silksong. But first, let's go to Hollow Knight. So for those of you guys who may not know about Hollow Knight, it's actually a very, very popular indie title made by the infamous team that you may have heard of in the last few days called Team Cherry. Now, the game itself was basically a roguelike action game in this really beautiful, like, hand-drawn art style. It was incredibly expansive. It had a very immersive world. From what I understand, it has a pretty good story as well. And overall, the game was top tier. Overwhelmingly positive on Steam, by the way. Forge your own path in Hollow Knight, an epic action adventure through a vast ruined kingdom of insects and heroes. Explore twisting caverns, battle tainted creatures, and befriend bizarre bugs, all in a classic hand-drawn 2D art style. Man, does that sound fucking fun to me. I'm gonna fart, but you guys are not gonna hear it. So as you can tell from the reviews and it being overwhelmingly positive, this game was very critically acclaimed pretty much everywhere, from the casual gamers to the hardcore sweats that can't ever put down Overwatch despite it being deader than my dead grandpa. He's 6 feet under. I'm not gonna hold you guys, and this is more like a side little tangent, but you know that like that Mount Rushmore trend where people were like doing a Mount Rushmore of like anime, and they were doing a Mount Rushmore of like white rappers, and a Mount Rushmore of like just music in general, blah blah blah. I would say this series is 1,000,000,000% on the Mount Rushmore of indie games. I would also put like FNAF as one for sure. Undertale, definitely. Garden of Banban. Anyways, after the release and it being so successful, the devs behind the game actually wanted to work on DLC. This is also because this game actually had a Kickstarter page. So you guys can see here, this is actually the original Kickstarter for Hollow Knight. You guys can see here, beautiful, mysterious 2D adventure through a surreal world of insects or whatever the case. And it ended up having 2,158 backers. It raised $57,000 of its original 35,000 goal, which is freaking crazy. And as you can see, there was a bunch of stretch goals as well. The 35,000 was to, you know, for them to make the game. And then you had these stretch goals here. So you had one called the White Palace, filled with traps and challenge, plus 2 new bosses. And you basically had all of this stuff. This would all be DLC added to the game once it officially came out. So Team Cherry, after it released and it was extremely successful, they wanted to work on DLC naturally. Then you had brand new expansive updates, adding a bunch of new content to the game. You had the Grim Troop update, you had the Hidden Dreams DLC, you had the Godmaster DLC, and a lot more, but you get the point, right? Now, one of the DLCs that was planned to be in the original game was an update that they would call Hollow Knight Silksong, which is based on one of the bosses in the game called Hornet. And it would basically be where you can play as, I almost said you could play as Silksong. You could play as Silksong. True, dude. Where you can play the game as Hornet and you can explore an entire other brand new area with them. The problem, or it wasn't really a problem, but Team Cherry had ended up making so much content for it and they had so many ideas that they wanted to implement in there that halfway through developing it for the first game, they just ultimately decided to make it an entire sequel instead. So here you can see Hollow Knight Silksong, and the idea was that Silksong was going to set to follow Hornet, the former princess of Hollow Knight's fallen kingdom of Hollow Nest, and a supporting character of that game, as she is forced to explore the new land of Farloom. I don't know why I said it like that. It includes expanded gameplay based on Hornet's combat skills, a larger game world, and a quest system. And this is all the stuff that they were going to add to the DLC. So when this was announced, obviously a lot of people were very excited, probably because a lot of them liked Hornet. You also probably had some gooners that like would fuck their chair if it moved. So all the Hollow Knight fans were extremely excited for this to come out. And with there being so much to the game game that they would add, obviously you expect that it would take a lot longer to develop. Now, the issue was that there was no idea when the game was going to release, and Team Cherry basically left all of the fans with loo balls for an extremely long time. And honestly, it got so bad that it literally got turned into a meme. It was starting to push to a decade of how long they were waiting. And this is something that developed that all of us had to experience, called the Silksong cycle. And this is my trademark coin. So if anyone uses it, then you know where they got it from. So how the cycle begins is it starts with any type of gaming presentation, primarily if it's like a Nintendo Direct or the Game Awards or any like massive gaming event or any that is having new games getting announced, especially if it's a Nindies Direct, which is basically a Nintendo Direct but specifically for indie games. Then Hollow Knight fans go on Twitter and then start coping, saying that Silksong is definitely going to be announced. It's all going to be the final announcement of said event. And then the presentation begins, and before and during the entire presentation, half of the comments in the live chat are just people spamming Silksong, just hoping and praying to their knees that they can finally get just a morsel of information. Then the direct or the presentation just ends with no sort of announcement whatsoever. And then after that, Silksong then trends on Twitter for pretty much the entirety of that day, and people basically bitch and whine and cry and yap about it not showing up in said presentation until the next event ultimately gets announced, and the cycle just continues. The Silksong fans did not give up hope at all though. Yeah, don't think any of what I said broke their spirit at all. Every single time you would see Silksong front and center in their minds. This didn't come with complete delusion, because there were times where Silksong would get teased but then just nothing would come out of it. I remember Xbox had actually put out a tweet, and I think it was like a response to somebody, and people were just waiting and waiting, and then nothing came of it. Xbox, you little whippersnappers, you would think that the interest in an indie game like that would falter at some point, right? But no, it definitely did not. The game consistently even remained the top most wish-listed game of all time for literal years. Occasionally you had games that beat it out at different points that were hyped up, like Black Myth Wukong or for great heavens. But overall, it consistently remained in the top wish-listed game spot, which is really crazy. If we're going back and betting on a video game that would rival Half-Life 3 delusion, I would not say it was Silksong, but it was definitely Silksong. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, if you want a long-lasting relationship with a loyal partner like whatsoever, look no further than the Silksong subreddit, because those niggas are so loyal. You could leave them for 3 years and they will wait with bated breath. There was even a channel called Daily Silksong News that posted daily news about Silksong without fail, even if there was nothing available about Silksong, like at all.
Today is May 31st, 2025. This is Ari, your host for today, bringing you your daily Silksong news. There has been no news to report for Silksong today. This has been your daily news for Silksong for today.
Bro, he literally reminds me, who's that guy that's like, here's your daily dose of internet. It's literally that dude, bro. So to say the game was heavily anticipated was a massive understatement. And it got so bad that there was a whole thing, people like waiting and then them saying with chest that the game was going to be announced and then ultimately not getting announced. Literally birthed that one meme with the main character that's like sat on that like cuck bench with the clown makeup on and like the nose and the afro. Yeah, that's where that's spawned from. So now we flash forward to 2025, where them niggas finally got some sort of hope given to them. Just an olive branch was extended. So where I think there was like a significant update, that there was finally something being shown off, was with everybody's favorite console in the world. Never seen anybody say any bad things about it, the Nintendo Switch 2. Less important than the Switch 2 was the first Direct that officially showed it off. Now usually in an average Nintendo Direct, you will always have this section where they do this thing where they montage and they just like flash different games on Steam to briefly showcase them. Now for the Switch 2 Direct, they essentially did the same exact thing, but this time, and this was so funny, but they just casually just flashed one of the most anticipated games of all time with no warning and nothing like that. They just flashed it on the screen. I remember when I first reacted to this, I was just caught so off guard. There's a lot of oh, this is when they do their typical thing and copyright my video. Oh No, you can't just do that. No, you actually can't just do that. They just montaged Hollow Knight Silksong? There's no way. They just montaged Hollow Knight Silksong. Excuse me? Excuse me? They just montage. Why did they just montage Hollow Knight Silksong? They just montage. Okay, all right, you know what? And this obviously caught a lot of people off guard because once again, we're talking about Hollow Knight Silksong here. And a lot of the people that watched the direct had reacted basically the same way, where they were just like, wait, what? What the hell just happened?
That's cool.
Now, it was funny and all, and it was cool knowing that Silksong was still in development. It's not like it was in development hell and they got canceled or something. Because honestly, a lot of people were speculating that, and I mean, can you blame them? There was little to no updates on the game. So in this aspect, we knew that the game existed, we just didn't know when the hell the game was coming out, which is what was the question on everyone's mind. So now we cut to August 18th, 2025, when Jeff Keighley had actually teased the game with this tweet of him like putting on a clown nose and stuff. So you can see it's Jeff Keighley and it says, first time, clown emoji. See you tomorrow for Gamescom, ONL. This is basically a promotion for Gamescom, which is an entire other gaming event that he runs. If you guys know Jeff Keighley, he runs like half the game events that happen. He runs like Summer Game Fest, Game Awards, and he runs this event called Gamescom every year. And basically he has this picture of him with a clown nose on, which to Hollow Knight Silksong fans is basically the equivalent of the fucking Batman signal. But instead of a bat, it's the picture of Hollow Knight sitting on the cuck bench with the clown makeup on. So this is an article by IGN and it says, Keighley's tease seems like a pretty sure thing. We know Silksong is coming out in 2025 barring any unexpected delays, and there's a demo of the game playable on the show floor of Gamescom this week. And yeah, the reason why this also made sense is because it was announced that Silksong was actually going to be playable at the booths for those that attended Gamescom 2025. It also specifically seemed to be highlighted at the Xbox section since Silksong is also coming out on Game Pass as well. So yeah, Jeff doing that makes perfect sense. We also know via a leak that the ROG Xbox Ally will launch on October 16th, and Xbox's Sarah Bond has previously stated that Silksong would be out on the system when it launched. If everyone's telling the truth and there have been no last minute changes, that means Silksong should be out in the next 2 months sometime. And that would also mean we're due for an actual, real confirmed release date any second now, which, as I've established before, what literally all the Silksong fans want. That's all they want, is like a release date. And then a day later, Team Cherry personally teased an announcement where they made a tweet that said, the countdown is on. Join us in 48 hours for a special announcement about Hollow Knight Silksong. Keep in mind, the last time they had tweeted before then was in June 28th, 2023. This is a repost, but you get the point. Whether or not it was a good news or bad news, you knew something big was getting announced. Now, a lot of people were obviously hoping for an official release date. Others were hoping that the fans suffer more and it gets delayed or canceled, because seeing people suffer is funny, okay? But realistically though, it was going to be some type of announcement regarding when the game comes out. That trailer hosted a lot of things. A lot of information about the game was officially revealed. For example, there was over 40 bosses, over 200 enemies. The live stream itself had over 250,000 viewers on the damn live stream. The tweet itself of them initially announcing it has 20 million fucking views on it. And the big thing was that the release date was set for September 4th, 2025. And the crowd went wild. So now we are in a post Silksong official release date world. The game has been announced and it's coming out very, very soon. Now, what was the point of me talking about all of this? Well, you guys know I am a dirty, disgusting slop tuber. There was some Silksong news that I will extrapolate and dramatize for you guys. Starting with the infamous interview. Soon after the announcement trailer, Team Cherry had ended up doing an interview with Bloomberg where they talked about a lot of interesting background information, answering questions questions, mainly the one that wanted to be answered, of why it took 7 entire years for the game to be developed, which they promptly answered. So they said, "We've been having fun. This whole thing is just a vehicle for our creativity anyway. It's nice to make fun things. The lengthy production wasn't the result of development challenge or obstacles," they said. "They just needed all these years to ensure that Silksong was exactly the game they wanted to make. It was never stuck or anything. It was always progressing. It's just a case that we're a small team and games take a lot of time. There wasn't any big controversial moment behind it." You know how there's like a lot of games out there that are stuck in like development hell and the whole thing gets stuck in limbo for one reason or another? Well, apparently Silksong is the first of its kind to be in development heaven. But to be fair, when you like really think about it, it kind of makes sense, and it's not really surprising that that's the reason, since that was literally the original reason for them making Silksong a separate game instead of DLC in the first place. To kind of summarize it, they say that they had so many ideas for the game that they would constantly implement, and obviously them being a smaller team, things were obviously going to take longer. Now, I've seen people's reaction, and one thing that I do have to agree with, regardless of the fact that this does make sense to me, is like, why the silence? They did answer this in the article, where to kind of summarize it, they basically said that they just stayed off social media and they felt like the updates weren't really significant enough to really give to people. So they just decided not to give any update at all and just to continue working on the game until there was something to talk about. However, I have to say, I still think that like some sort of like, "Hey guys, we're working on the game, we're still very passionate on working for it," would have probably sufficed for the people. Like, I don't think they wanted to see any crazy things or like any story spoilers, but just knowing that the game exists probably would have been nice. But on the other hand, like, I understand why they didn't give like some huge insane update. And I guess it's kind of one of those things where when something doesn't happen for a longer and longer time, people's expectations are like built up. Even if that's not the case, you might think that's the case. So they might have thought that let's just finish the game and then give them the full game. So yeah, I just feel like it would have been a little better to just send some kind of update out there instead of people going on the Silksong subreddit and doing like Batman levels of detective work with like the chocolate cake stuff. I was like, bruh. However, what I will say is it is nice to know that these guys are passionate about expanding the world and like what they've created, because it really just shows the investment they have in the series. Hopefully I don't eat my words and eat crow here, but I think it's levied pretty confident that the quality of the games are going to be super top notch, or it could just be like Poppy Playtime 4 to just be complete dog shit, but who knows. Now, another thing that actually had caught some interest was the reveal that there was in fact going to be DLC, because they mentioned how they haven't burned out in the slightest. So they say Gibson and Pellin say they're happy that the game is finally coming out, and even happier that they will get to keep working on it, which they still find enjoyable even after 7 years. They're already making big plans to add extra content to Silksong in the months and years to come. So I will see you guys in 2037 when that DLC comes. And the first when the first batch of DLC comes out. And kind of the last big thing that kind of caught people off guard. Now, this wasn't revealed in the interview, but it was actually revealed in people who were backing the Kickstarter. So if you guys remember, once again, the game was originally funded through a Kickstarter, and there were stretch goals, and those stretch goals that were met, they were going to develop things for. 7 years later, down the line, where Hollow Knight has just become this insane indie title in this indie series, it was actually reported that Hollow Knight Silksong was actually going to be played by the people who backed the Kickstarter first, and not early access like how damn near everyone else is with their release. Basically, to kind of give like a layman summary, usually when a game is finished getting developed, before it releases, I think it's like a few weeks or like a month or so before it releases, it goes to huge people, get it in early access, and then they play it, they review the game, reviews get posted, which is usually how people get if they're gonna determine whether they're going to buy the game or not. But this time, instead of it going to like IGN people or kind of like big wigs or something along those lines, they were still planning to go with their original plan and send it to people backing the Kickstarter.
Team Cherry might have just made the boldest release decision we've seen all year. Hollow Knight Silksong isn't following the usual playbook. Most big games let reviewers play early, but Team Cherry is flipping that around. When Silksong finally launches, September 4th by the way, the first people to get their hands on won't be the critics. It'll be you and me, including the original Kickstarter backers who helped make Hollow Knight possible in the first place. Only after the launch will reviews come out, meaning no early scores, no previews. Just raw first impressions from the community. It is a bold move, and it really shows Team Cherry's loyalty to the fans who started this journey back in 2014.
Each of them had actually gotten this email explaining that they are 100% going to be the first to get their keys for Silksong, which I'm not going to lie, and I have to give them their credit. It is super cool seeing this because I have literally never seen this happen before. So it's actually really sick that they're like actually putting the people that supported their games first before all the interviewers, because these were the people that originally backed them. And I think that's super cool and sweet, honestly. Now, the reveal of Silksong and the release date and all that, once again, went super viral, as I've already explained, and thus it encouraged Hollow Knight fans to go back and play the game, and it also encouraged new people who were actually very interested in what the hubbub was all about to go and play Hollow Knight for themselves, go and buy it on Steam and play for themselves. It's actually so insane, but the play time for Hollow Knight has spiked super hard. From what was reported, it had actually sold 15 million copies, and as for right now actually peaked to 20,000 players and counting according to the Steam charts. That's bigger than like some AAA titles. And this also means that Hollow Knight is literally one of the most successful indie titles of all times, just by a numbers aspect. Now, there was also a whole other effect that Hollow Knight Silksong's reveal, of it being September 4th and the release date trailer, had in terms of the gaming landscape, okay? And unfortunately, this is where the drama comes. It's not really drama. It's left, right, and center. There have been so many indie games that have actually completely delayed their title being released, not because of they need more time to develop the game or there was like internal drama going on with the company or whatever. It was literally just because Silksong was coming out too close to their original release date, so they pushed the release date to a whole other time. I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys, maybe this has happened before, but I genuinely have never heard of this, like genuinely. And I kind of wanted to give you guys like a few examples that I actually saw. So one was this game called Phaland, created by Tail Games, and they had actually put out a tweet that announced their postponement of the game coming out. We want to share something important with you all. Our version 1.0 launch was set for September 9th, but with today's announcement of Hollow Knight Silksong releasing on September 4th, we've made the tough call to postpone our release. We poured years of work and love into Phaland, and we want to make sure it arrives at a time when it can receive the attention and care it deserves. That is fucking crazy. I'm not gonna lie. There's this other roguelike game that is clearly very inspired off of Hollow Knight, and it's this game that I saw that actually looks pretty cool. I actually want to play it at some point. It's called Constance, and once again, this is very Hollow Knight coded, so obviously they're definitely gonna have to delay their game. So they actually had their game come out on November 24th, 2025. This would be more than 2 months after Silksong came out. They actually put out this tweet. They said, "Are you happy with how far Silksong and Constance release dates are apart? November 4th and November 24th." I just said, no should be a bigger gap. Hey, I'm not gonna lie, 12.3% of y'all are assholes, bro. That's 2 months. You need 2 months. Come on, bro. There's also this game called Little Witch in the Woods that delayed their game to September 15th because of Hollow Knight Silksong. And then there's this game called Baby Steps that has also moved its release date to September 23rd instead of its original release date of September 8th because Silksong was coming out. And there's probably a lot more out there. These are just the ones that I found as I was rolling on Twitter looking stuff up. They know they cannot compete. It's actually so funny. It's actually so funny. Hey man, look, you gotta step aside for the king there, dog. That's ultimately the Silksong fans are free. Now they can make way. They can throw off the clown makeup. They can throw away the noses in the trash. They can throw away everything and give it to the morons waiting for Kingdom Hearts 4. Kingdom Hearts 4, guys. That's gonna be the new one. That's the new clown makeup. And this kind of brings us to the final little update on Hollow Knight Silksong, and that is the price. Now, a lot of people were, of course, worried because we live in a world where games are costing more and more, and who knows if that was gonna apply to Silksong. However, recently it has been fully confirmed by Team Cherry that the game is officially going to cost $20 flat. And once again, I wasn't too shocked by this because Team Cherry is an indie company, and I kind of feel like they would, for the most part, not nickel and dime their audience like that, making this game cost like any more than like $30 if I'm honest. So this kind of fell right in line with my expectations, but it is once again really refreshing to know that Team Cherry isn't kind of going by what the standard is nowadays and is not charging like $100 for 70% of the game and then put the rest behind a paywall. However, there is a downside, ladies and gentlemen, to this. And that kind of leads me into this last thing I wanted to talk about. I actually found this out a while ago. So you guys remember Sons of the Forest when it first got announced on Steam and it first got released? Apparently there was so much traffic of people buying the game when it first came out that it apparently completely stopped card services from working and people literally could not pay for the game. It literally wouldn't work. And so now we are dealing with one of the biggest indie games of all time getting released. I'm just gonna say this: September 4th. Hey, Hollow Knight fans, I wish you crackheads the best of luck. And with that, I'm out. Peace. Goodbye.